Hey everyone, Tactics here, and we got an interesting post this morning. Upcoming tank tuning in the War Within, nerfs to self-sustain and survivability. And this is across the board to all 6 tank specs. Massive changes coming in here. So let's go through them. Let's see who got hit the hardest, who maybe got out not too bad. And let's go through this big post here, because Blizzard has paired this with a massive philosophy post, if you will, where the gist is here, tanks throughout Dragonflight have been extremely powerful, extremely durable, potentially not needing much assistance from healers. Potentially, it's been optimal to drop a healer entirely. They want, multiplayers, people to play together, group content, they want healers to be involved, they want tanks to be involved, they want 3 DPS, and that's kind of their whole thing here. Basically, they're saying there are some challenges. Enemy damage has increased to challenge tanks, but they think if it increases too much, it gets too spiky, and they want to avoid that. That's not a bad goal, right? Avoiding insanely spiky tank damage isn't necessarily bad. If tanks are not threatened enough, then the most challenging part of the endgame content can become keeping DPS and healers alive, often against high burst damage. Making tank survival a more involving element of group gameplay could give us some freedom to ease up the threat on other group members. So they're saying if they threaten the tank more, maybe that allows them to threaten other players less, which, I mean, maybe that's true historically. The last couple expansions in a raid environment, things like externals have usually not been used on tanks. Even sometimes beacon, you see beacon healing moved off of the tank because other players are more in danger. And so maybe, if you're putting more damage into the tank, those things go back to tank, and you're allowed to now do less damage to other players because defensives are lessened. Though I think there is still the whole problem of other specs and classes having a ton of defensives available to them, which, and their whole thing here has been, how do we fix healing, right? How do we fix healing? They've done things like reducing the value of avoidance and leech. They've done things like reducing self-healing to other DPS and healer specs in the game, but they've said it's a bit too early, or a bit too soon, sorry, before the expansion to actually do a defensive ability pruning. I just find it a bit odd that this is coming, like a month before the expansion. You'd think they'd want to give us some time to actually get through this, but okay. But anyways, because of those reasons, I said they're making reductions to tank durability and self-healing to allow them to smooth out the damage tanks and parties take, while retaining the challenge of keeping them alive over time. Here's my problem. They've had a similar philosophy post, or not as long, right? But they had, a similar goal regarding trinkets, right? We saw tank trinkets and healer trinkets, or not tank and healer trinkets, but tank and healers getting a reduced amount of value from using damage trinkets, right? That was a recent change, or maybe a few weeks back. And the problem is, what's happened is basically it hasn't pushed healers and tanks. Well, maybe healers. Let's talk about tanks. It hasn't pushed tanks to use tank trinkets. All those trinkets still suck. All it's done is it's pushed tanks to only be using stat stick trinkets, or they still use the DPS trinkets, but just nerfed, right? Because they have reduced damage. That's all the tanks are doing right now in the beta, by the way. So their goal for the trinkets, well, not a bad idea. The execution was extremely flawed, and that is my worry for this, right? Like, the goal here is not necessarily wrong, it's not necessarily bad, but you're only giving yourself like a month before the expansion to get it all sorted out. I think they might have bitten off too much, right? Like, I am not currently confident with their track record on the most recent changes on beta, in terms of dungeon design, in terms of the actual trinket stuff, right? Like, the Mythic Plus system changes are not too bad. I still have a couple issues with that, right? Like the extra death timer and just the additional layer of scaling on the 12. But the ideas are good, and I'll give them that. But outside of that, I don't know if I have the confidence that this is going to be executed correctly. But let's continue here. Tanks will take more damage overall, but shouldn't die significantly more often. To increase the overall damage tanks take and their reliance on healers, are primarily increasing the percentage of damage they take after mitigation from steady damage sources like physical attacks. We're making fewer reductions to each class's defenses against burst damage or other threats that are currently most likely to be lethal to them. And counters will be tuned with this in mind, so the character of tank damage changes, but the lethality of it doesn't. So they want to put more of your overall damage intake from just the steady swings and less in these tank buster abilities, is my understanding from here. And important to note, we haven't tested this. They could have gotten this spot on, right? Maybe they have just decreased all the ability damage across the board, and it's no longer super scary to be eating, you know, 3 or 4 of those mobs doing ability casts, and maybe you're more scared about the melee swings, right? So who knows, because testing hasn't been opened yet. Servers are still down, but I am concerned. At the very least, tank damage intake should be steady, not too fast. One of our goals for these changes is to smooth out the rate tanks take damage to reduce surprise spiky deaths. Healers should have time to respond to tank health, and tanks should have time to use self heals like Word of Glory or Celestial Brew. For some classes, we're increasing their passive defensive to compensate for decreases to more active or reactive defensive mechanics. Tank busters will still create challenging moments that reward tanks for planning and smart use of cooldowns. We'll see how often this happens, though, especially if you're decreasing a lot of the strength of active things. Tanks will still have strong answers to threats or periods of danger, but less sustained self-healing. Tanks should have autonomy over their own survival and will still have cooldowns and emergency self-heals, but the healing of continuous effects, so the passive like leech healing, passive self-healing from spending rage, so tanks must have more of a partnership with healers to restore their missing health once it's lost. Okay. Healer gameplay should not... It's really funny, wait, that they mentioned Indomitable here, because Prot Warriors have, like, by far the worst self-healing, right? Healer gameplay should not be dominated by tank healing. Healers play a critical role in keeping tanks alive as part of what they bring to the table. I mean, okay. However, healers contribute to the groups in many ways, especially in dungeons. They sustain the group, dispel harmful effects, and respond to burst damage, all while doing mechanics. Tank healing should not demand so much, true, that it interferes with their other roles, and may take some iteration to get the balance right on this, where healers feel essential to tank survival, but with their attention not overly demanded by it. And this is why I'm concerned that they're only giving themselves 4 weeks. Tank gameplay should not significantly change or require actions like kiting. We'll see, especially because the whole thing is they're putting the danger in the melee swings, is what they're saying, right? So if they're putting the danger in the melee swings, unless I'm misunderstanding that post above, primarily increasing the percentage of damage they take after mitigation from steady damage towards like physical attacks, right? So they're increasing the damage of just the melee swing. So that, in theory, would actually make it so if you're trying to do decent sized pulls and high keys, like you may need to end up kiting if you have weaker active mitigation, or not active mitigation, your cooldowns, right? We're happy that more players are enjoying playing tanks with their friends and pickup groups. Yep, that's going to be good. There are a lot of demands on tanks, such as learning Mythic Plus routes, leading groups, and knowing what trash abilities are particularly dangerous. The gameplay of standing toe-to-toe with groups of enemies and the tactics, shout out, you've learned to survive, should continue to be effective, hopefully. Feedback, yep, okay. All right, here is it. Here it is. So, oh yeah, so this was known, basically, everyone has so much stamina. I would talk about this in attack power scaling heals in a previous video, but basically, percentage health heals are much more powerful in War Within compared to attack power scaling heals because a massive stamina increase was done. So, allegedly, they're going to be doing some changes here to counteract that now. So, let's see. Blood Death Knight. Death Strike's a powerful ability that allows blood decays to mitigate a percentage of any form of damage taken in the last 5 seconds. In a way, Death Strike works like a retroactive shield block. Instead of reducing damage up front, mitigates if used in succession. Death Strike can affect a single hit multiple times, yes. In some cases, restoring yourself to a higher health than where you started. So they're changing Death Strike to only heal the Death Knight for a percentage of damage taken from a given damage event once. So once you've healed up that damage taken, it gets taken out of the pool, I guess. We're also reducing runic power generation somewhat. They have had very, very high runic power base generation. Yeah, that was something actually we talked about, on a stream a little while back. Reducing some of the mitigation that they get from high uptime cooldowns like Enfeeble and Dancing Rune Weapon, but increasing armor from Bone Shield. Overall, Death Knight should take damage more smoothly, and they'll remain one of the strongest tanks for encounters with high magic or periodic damage. So let's see. This strike can now only heal a Death Knight for a percentage of damage taken from a given event once. I expect this is a pretty significant nerf to Death Strike because it was like a 5-second window, right? Where you could heal, I think. So let's sit up here, yeah. We'll have to see how this feels. I mean, potentially it means, yeah, your Death Strikes are going to be, on average, significantly smaller than they were before. A new aura, Coagulating Blood, shows the amount of previously taking damage that will be used to calculate the value of a Death Strike, so you can actually see what your Death Strike size here is from this aura, okay? Blood Shield's cap is now 50% of the Death Knight's maximum health was 100%. So they halved the cap, and it's no longer increased by vampiric blood. Okay. Rune of the Fallen Crusader heals. Okay, that's a relatively small nerf. You know, less healing there. Here's some lower runic power. Enfeeble has a small nerf. Some passive damage reduction nerf. Bone Shield increased armor by 100% of strength instead of 80%, so that's a little nicer. Leeching Strike was never going to be taken. Only 35% parry on Dancing Rune Weapon. That's not too bad. Each active Dancing Rune Weapon generates 3 runic power when mirroring Heart Strike was 5. That's that you're going to feel that one probably. Increases Dancing Rune Weapon duration by 6 seconds was 8, so you get lower duration on Rune Weapon. Reduces damage the enemy deals you by 15% from Blood Drinker. Okay. Bone Storm heals you for 2% of your max health with 3, up to a maximum of 10% was 15%. Bone Storm damage increase. Okay, so yeah, this was doing not a ton of damage. I also wonder if they've actually allowed this to CDR Rune Weapon now, because if that is true and they've allowed the CDR Rune Weapon, that's probably not too bad. But in general, this is not a good set of changes for Blood DK. Listen, it could have been worse, certainly, but they've been hitting a lot of places here. This is a little rough. We'll have to see how it plays. We'll have to see all that stuff, but at first glance, these are very significant nerfs to Blood DK survivability. Let's move on, though. Vengeance Demon Hunter. Like Death Strike for Death Knights, Soul Fragments give Demon Hunters strong recovery against any type of damage, as well as strong self-healing, because Demon Hunters consume Soul Fragments steadily. We're not changing the rules for how often they can affect a damage event. We're increasing Vengeance's overall damage taken by weakening the damage reduction of the talents like Void Reaver and Illuminate. Ah, yes, Illuminated Sigils. While keeping the power of core abilities like Soul Fragments and Demon Spikes, it will continue to be one of the stronger tank classes self-healing surviving. Live by the Glaive now restores 2% of your max health, was 4. Thick Skin increases stamina by 60%, was 65. So slight stamina reduction. Flat, again, damage reduction reduced here. Some flat healing reduced from Soul Cleave. Frailty heals for 8% of the damage done, down from 10. So they're reducing the power of each stack of Frailty here. Same here. Again, just generally, Frailty is going to be a bit weaker here. Illuminated Sigils got nerfed. Please buff Illuminated Sigils in another way. Give them 2 charges of Sigil of Spite, man, please. Down in Flames also caught a nerf here. Okay, so Firebrand cooldown only 12 seconds and a 15. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. You'll still, I think you're just gonna take Down in Flames over Illuminated Sigils in like every situation now. It's just, why would you take Illuminated Sigils in its current state? Metamorphosis increases max health by 40%, was 50%, so you're not quite as healthy in Metamorphosis. Dark Glare Boon now refreshes 15 to 30% of Feldev's cooldown and refunds 15 to 30 Fury. So nerfs to that. You do have options to take something outside of that, but I think a lot of people were definitely focusing in on Dark Glare Boon, especially because of the tier. So that's that one hurts a little bit. In general, this doesn't seem as bad as Blood DK, though. I think Blood DK definitely got hit harder than Vengeance looking at these changes. So there's that. Vengeance, you didn't get hit as hard as Blood. Let's go. Let's go. Shout out you. Guardian Druid. With high armor and iron for uptime, Druid should be one of the best tanks at surviving physical damage. We're slightly increasing the damage they take from all types of damage and balancing the power of their self-healing. We're also reducing the duration of some of their cooldowns to make timing their use more important. Okay. Frenzied Regen heals you for 20% of your max health, was 32. So this was healing for a metric ton on beta, right? Because basically a lot of Guardian's other forms of healing are attack power based, and Frenzied Regen just wasn't. So their healing meter was like, 70% Frenzied Regen, 30% everything else. I wonder if they're going to help by buffing the other forms, but let's continue reading. Iron Fur increases armor by 112% of agility, was 120%. So the individual stacks of Iron Fur are going to be a little bit less. Renewed heals for 20% of max health, was 30%. Okay. Reinvigoration reduces Frenzied Regen's cooldown by 10 to 20%, was 20-40%. Okay. So now this talent that, you almost never, you didn't take all of like Dragonflight, right? Like you didn't take this talent all of Dragonflight. It's now a 2-point node where the max value is equivalent to the old 1 point. This talent, if you're going to nerf talents this much, and it looks like they are nerfing a bunch of other talents down here, are you going to rework the Guardian tree in any way, or we're just gonna pretend the problems don't exist there? I guess we're pretending. Also, on the same note, dude, Frenzied Regen's now healing for 20%. You're never going to take the CDR. Why is this on the GCD again? I have a self-heal that heals for like less than a health stone, but it's on the GCD. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. I'm not tilted. Earth Warden reduces damage taken by 25%, was 30. Again, this was something that people were cooking, I think, and taking Reinvigoration and Earth Warden on beta, but with these nerfs, you probably just don't, right? So you just don't take these talents anymore. Survival of the Fittest reduces the cooldowns by 12-24%, was 15-30. That's relatively minor. Tooth and Claw reduces damage taken by 12%, was 50%, relatively minor. After the Wildfire triggers after spending 300 rage. That one's more significant. Maybe just don't take after the Wildfire anymore. Ursock's Fury grants a shield equal to 25%. Okay, so... Okay. So remember how it was like, oh, maybe they buffed the attack power scaled healing? They instead nerfed it. So the Ursock's Fury, very good on live servers, right? On Dragonflight, it's very, very good. The 60% stamina change happened, and all of a sudden Ursock's Fury was doing almost no healing because it couldn't keep up because your attack power didn't scale relatively, right? As I was talking about, Frenzy Regen was most of your healing. Ursock's Fury was almost nothing, so people just spec'd out of Ursock's Fury, and now you're nerfing it again. This is my problem, right? It's like stuff like this just screams that you don't understand what the issues with the tank specs are, right? You don't understand where the problems are actually coming from with these changes, because it currently, right? If the expansion, if this tuning stays, you will never play this talent all of the War Within, period. You will just never play it. So I'm just a bit confused why this is even a change. Again, same with Reinvigoration. Like, this talent is so bad for 2 points. This is so atrociously bad for 2 points. And it feels like, I don't know, like if you're going to do these changes, you need to do a talent adjustment to Guardian, because it just doesn't make sense with where things are. So yeah, this is atrociously bad. This is really bad. But again, Guardians don't care, because Guardians on the beta weren't playing this talent because of how bad it was already. So really, this doesn't affect you at all. Elun's favorite heals for 25% of arcane damage dealt was 40%. Again, this is attack power scaling healing. It was doing relatively low amounts of healing. You're getting hard carried by your frenzied regen. Got hit by a nerf. It's kind of whatever. Rage of the Sleeper duration reduced to 8 seconds was 10. Did we ever reduce? I mean, we did reduce Rune Weapon, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. Rage of Sleeper damage taken reduced to 20% was 25. Rage of Sleeper Leech decreased to 20% was 25. So, you know, nerfs to Rage of the Sleeper here across the board. This is probably not as bad as the nerfs they got to Dancing Rune Weapon. 5% parry, less runic power, less extended duration. That's probably not as bad of a nerf, but it's still not ideal. Pulverized duration reduced to 8 seconds. Oh no, guys. Pulverize. The talent that has never seen play even one time. Yeah. You guys need to figure out what you want to do with that button, because that button might as well not exist already, and now it's nerfed again. So good luck. Ursock's Guidance reduces the cooldown of Incarnation Guardian of Ursock by 1 second for each 25 rage spent was 20. So a little bit less CDR now as well on your Incarn, but this doesn't seem atrociously bad either. Yeah, this is weird. Like, some of these, they just make no sense, is the problem, right? It's like, if you're actually trying to address these problems, why you nerf these talents should be buffed. Like, this talent needs to be buffed, not nerfed. This talent needs to be buffed in, this talent is Jesus, right? It's just some of these decisions don't make any sense. Why is this on the GCD? This talent is just dead. Like, they're just making talents dead talents here for Guardian, right? I don't think that's the case for some of these other specs that we just read. But for Guardian, they've just decided, yeah, we're gonna make, this talent dead. We're gonna make this talent dead. We're gonna make this talent dead, even though you're kind of already dead. It's so confusing. I don't understand. Okay, Brewmaster Monk. Healers have more time to heal monks than other tanks because Stagger spreads out the damage they take over time. Goals for monks to take a little more damage overall than other tanks to offset this effect. However, we feel their overall magic damage mitigation is a little low. The buffing Stagger and its value against magic. Okay. Increases their physical damage taken overall. We're primarily reducing dodge. Okay. The thing that they just constantly stack up. Okay. So Brewmaster Monk increases monk's armor. Okay, so you're getting more armor, but you're getting less dodge from your mastery, right? This is the crit healing stuff. Slight nerf there. That's not too bad. Increased stagger by 8%. Increased magic damage stagger by 13%. Into the Wind. This was the dodge talent. The little magic shield. I assume it still builds up to the same total amount, so that's not too big a deal. And you can always take diffuse magic instead, right? Some self-healing. Reduced Spirit of the Ox, some reduced chance to summon a healing sphere. Okay. Elixir Determination nerfed again. I believe this is an additional nerf. That's, that one hurts a little bit. Celestial Brew healing reduced by 10%, and some even more dodge reduction here. Honestly, I don't think dodge reduction really matters, right? Like, this feels like they're going to be in a better spot. They have more armor, they have more stagger, they have more magic stagger, they have a little bit less stealth healing, but they already didn't have like a ton of that. Elixir of Determination is probably the biggest nerf here and the thing you're most sad about, but everything else is relatively minor, and you're gaining stagger, armor, and magic stagger. So I guess Brewmaster's, like, relatively at least, for sure, right? Like, Brewmaster stocks are definitely up compared to all three of these guys. I think if you're looking, Blood DK currently I think has it the worst. Vengeance and Guardian I don't think were impacted too much. A lot of the major Guardian ones, like I was talking about, are talents you're never going to take anyways. It's just weird. They've just doubled down on you not taking them, and they've, again, like things like After the Wildfire, maybe you're now just not taking this talent anymore. It's just weird. Just killing talents instead of actually addressing the problem, but that's fine. And I actually don't think Vengeance was affected that much at all either. Because, like, again, Luminous Sigils, like, you weren't going to do this anyways, right? You're going to play Down in Flames. You're probably feeling the meta help. Maybe not. 40%, 50%, but you're also losing some stamina here, so it's kind of compounding the stamina you're losing. You're losing a couple percentage value points on frailty stuff. Doesn't seem too bad, though, either for Vengeance. Let's go to Protection Paladin. Paladins have a balance of good defenses against both physical and magic damage, do they? They can be in danger if they lose the defensive power of standing in Consecrate, or if the armor bonus from Chill the Righteous drops, so we are not reducing any of their passive physical defensives like armor or block. Like a Druid's, Paladins value time on the defensive cooldown, so we're pulling back on some of their durations to make timing more important. Did they reduce the durations of anything? I mean, they only reduced the durations really of Rage of the Sleeper, right? I guess they reduced your CDR slightly. But that's it, right? Nothing else. And they were just CDR of Incarn. Not really durations targeted, I would say there. It's just Rage of the Sleeper. So Shield of the Righteous increases your armor by 150% of your strength, was 170%, so nerf to that. That's not great. Damage reduction effect while setting Consecrate Mastery, reduced by 20%. Okay, so Paladins already kind of felt the most in danger on the beta. I am concerned. Sanctified Plates armor increases, no longer applies to bonus armor from Shield of the Righteous, so you don't get the double dip. Improved Holy Shield increases your chance to block spells by 8%. I don't think you were taking this. The Dusk buff from Of Dusk and Dawn reduces damage taken by 4%, very minor. Word of Glory healing increased by 10%. Let's go. Woo! Yeah, it needed more than that, though. Sentinel's duration increased to, or reduced, sorry, to 16 seconds, was 20. Eye of Tears reduced to 6 seconds, was 9. Okay, that's criminal, right? That is criminal. Right, Holy Power ability reduced cooldown by 1.5, and you reduce. Okay, okay. So you have 4 less seconds of Sentinel, which is a big deal, right? Because having those seconds lets you build up even more seconds. So this is more than a 4-second nerf to Sentinel, especially in Bloodlust, right? Is this also only Sentinel? It only says Sentinel here. Are Might and Sentinel different durations? Maybe they are now, or maybe this is just wings across the board. I guess we'll have to see. We don't know. But yeah, this plus this is definitely rough, because you're now going to be getting wings less often, and your wings is going to be significantly shorter. Again, this is not a 4-second nerf to wings because you can extend it. This is a much more than 4-second nerf to wings. So that is definitely concerning. And then this is just like, I don't know what you could have made it like a nice number, like 8, and it didn't feel too bad. Doing this all the way down to 6 seconds feels odd, especially when you have a whole hero talent tree that revolves around Eye of Tyr. So now this talent, no matter what, if you want to play Templar, you're still forced to take Eye of Tyr. Make no mistake, you are forced into this 6-second duration DR in your capstone tree. I wouldn't be surprised if you just never wanted to take this talent ever because of where it is in the tree and how much they just nerfed it by. So that is very concerning. This was actually my concern I was talking about with hero trees that revolve around capstone talents. What if those capstone talents just suck? And now we're going to find out, because this kind of sucks. I don't know what you're going to do as a Templar. I mean, you're just going to be forced to take it. I wouldn't be surprised if you played Lightsmith and you never touch Eye of Tyr ever because of this. So that is interesting. Certainly interesting. This sucks. This might be the worst. This might be worse than Blood DK. This might be worse than Blood DK. Again, this one doesn't matter, I don't think, because that's the extra talent that you don't take. But these are rough. And this Word of Glory buff does not compensate. This is not the Word of Glory needed like a 20% buff minimum before taking into account these changes, right? And then you're also just this too. These are insanely rough. So you're way less tanky just generally, because you should always have both these up, and you're way less, your cooldowns just last way less time, and you have way less uptime on them. That's yikes. This is not what Paladin needed. And like I said, I think Paladin was already maybe the weakest defensive tank on beta right now, and I think these are the worst changes for them defensively. Ow. Owie. And we have one more tank, though. Prop Warrior. Warrior's the strongest thing against physical damage, so true. They can be vulnerable to magic or periodic damage. In this round of changes, we're increasing their damage taken across the board by reducing the power of defensive stands. Warriors also have some strong heals that scale with their max health, like Indomitable and Impending Victory, reducing the powers of those, and to compensate for these. I mean, that stamina increase already there. Pain and gain, kind of whatever. This is trickle healing. It means nothing. Impending Victory, 10% nerf on Impending Victory. You'll probably feel that, you know, it's like a, you know, worse than Healthstone now, but 4% DR nerf on defensive stance, so that's what their nerf is there. That's not too bad, all things considered. Fight through the flames, cause defensive stance, reduce damage taken by 6%, so they're giving that a little bit of a buff. It's kind of hard to take it because of where it is on the talent tree. So I mean, in a lot of cases, I don't think I ever took this talent, but it's there, I guess. Into the fray, healing, increase haste by up to 8%. This talent, again, this is why you reducing the haste that you're going to get from this talent, that I think you already kind of can't take, because you're going back to the, you know, stats from the beginning of the expansion. So I've been using the other choice note here to help maintain your shield block uptime at max. So I don't think you were taking this anyways. Punish reduces damage enemies deal to you by 2%, was 3% per stack. Okay. A little bit less passive stamina and armor here as well. Indomitable nerfs, they mentioned this. Less max health overall, and heals you for 1% max health per 20 rage spent. So you need to spend more rage to get that passive healing. So this is a pretty significant nerf there. You're going to have a lot less health now as well, right? You're losing 2% there, you're losing 4% here. You're losing a bunch of armor there, which is also strength, remember, for warriors. Armor is strength as well. So you're losing some strength here as well. And you're losing some passive DR. Defender's Aegis reduces shield wall's cooldown by 60 seconds. Oh, so that's a buff. Defender's Aegis is better. Impenetrable wall causes shield time to generate an additional 4 rage, was 3, and reduces the remaining cooldown shield wall by 6. Oh, so that's a buff too. So they buffed that talent. So this is actually okay. Disrupting shout cooldown increased to 90 seconds, was 75. So they've re-nerfed, because this was a previous buff, I think, to disrupting shout, their AoE silent, or AoE interrupt rather. So it's back to a 90 seconds AD instead of 75, which it's okay. Definitely has value in keys, but yeah, it's okay. I still wish this was 1 talent point instead of 2, but this doesn't seem very bad either, actually. This might be like Brewmasters, I think, are on top in terms of who got the least affected or best outcome. Probably Prop Warrior is right after Brewmaster. And then Vengeance and Guardian are probably similar. Maybe it's Vengeance and then it's Guardian, and then it's like Blood Decay and Prop Paladin got absolutely stomped by this. So like I said, we haven't played it. We'll have to see. I am definitely concerned on execution, because like I said, they've had good philosophy. They've had good points across multiple blue posts, but their execution has not been great. Looking at the trinkets, looking at other stuff like that in recent beta builds and stuff like that. So I'm a bit concerned. We'll have to see. Maybe they've done some sweeping changes to tank busters and melee hits and stuff like that, and it doesn't feel crazy, but you know, I will have to do that testing, and I'll be doing that testing, and we'll be going over how tanks feel probably in a couple weeks from now, closer to the expansion, and see, because of course every single tank tier list, every single tank ranking, everything that exists right now on YouTube is moot. That is done. It doesn't work anymore. So we will have to see in the future how this plays. Love to know what you guys think, though. Are you okay with these goals? Do these goals make sense to you? Did you want tanks to be nerfed? I know I've had comments of a lot of healers been like, we need a nerf tank. So, you know, here you go. It's in. Let me know what you guys think. Otherwise, shout out to my Patreon supporters for everything they do. It means a lot. And I'll see everyone in the next video.